Lovely evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Children Education Policy and Accountability Committee. I'm the chair, Councillor Helen Rowbottom. We have hybrid meeting tonight, so some joining online, some in the room with us. So welcome everyone. Welcome anyone who's joining us on the live stream. Tonight we have a few items on the agenda. Just to run through an overview, we'll be looking at the Youth Justice Inspection outcomes from June this year. We'll be looking at the Corporate Parenting Board review, a report on the Learning Partnership, which is linking schools and the community, and also reflecting on Summer in the City programme, which provides food and activity for young people during school holidays. So item one, apologies for absence. I wanted to pass on apologies on behalf of Councillor Alex Sanderson, who's the Cabinet Member for Children and Education, who sends her apologies as she has a clashing work commitment. Item two, declarations of interest. Do any members in the room or online wish to declare any interests? Okay, I'll take silence as a no, thank you. The third is perhaps we can do actually a round of introductions. Is that best to do now, David? That's not quite scheduled in. So I'm going to go around and introduce everyone. So just to say that those attending, I've got myself, Helen Rowbottom, as chair, and perhaps I'll go around the room first and then virtually and ask people to introduce themselves. So
Councillor Macy Woman.
My name is Councillor Gerald Brown from West Ken Ward.
Councillor Lucy Richardson. I'm Maina Gordon, Operational Director of Children and Young People Services.
Pete Taylor, Director of Education SEND.
Jackie McShannon, Director of Children's Services. Hello.
perfect. And then I'll pick round. So Councillor Afzal Khan, do you want to go first?
Yes, hi, I'm Councillor Afzal Khan.
Nandini.
Hi, I'm Nandini Ganesh, one of the co-optees. I run Parents Active, the parent forum in Hammersmith and Fulham.
Brilliant, thanks Nandini. Eleanor, you're muted at the moment, so might just need to press unmute.
Now you can speak, Tony.
Is that better? I'm Eleanor Allen. I'm the London Doctors and Water Schools co-optee.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Nadia.
Hello, good evening. Sorry, I was very much hoping to be able to join you in person this evening, but my relief carer let me down, quite frankly. So I couldn't leave my parents unattended. I'm another one of the co-opted members. I first joined the committee many years ago as a parent governor representative, but have since been a co-opted member, such as Nandini and Eleanor, and delighted to be with you this evening, albeit not in person, for which I'm terribly sorry.
Not to worry at all. Thank you very much for joining us, Nadia. That's exactly why we have these meetings as hybrid, because life crops up sometimes. So thank you so much for joining. Okay, great. So I will move to item 3, the minutes. Just to note that Councillor Afzal Khan, you had an addition to the minutes for item 8. I didn't know whether you wanted to read that out, or I'm happy to on your behalf, but go for it if you've got it in front of you.
I'm very happy to read it out if you like. So on point 8, Summer in the City 2022, summer activities for children and young people, Councillor Afzal Khan observed that a majority of the 16,000 summer activity sessions were planned in north and central part of the borough, despite the fact that South Fulham had many young families, housing estates, schools, parks, and the Sands End Art and Community Centre as possible venues where sessions could be delivered. And Mr. Marcus Robinson kindly accepted that these were indeed good venues in South Fulham and made a note of the disparity and said that future plans would ensure a more equitable distribution of session venues across the borough. Thank you.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Good point, well made, and we'll make sure that that's embedded into the minutes retrospectively if it wasn't already. So thank you very much.
Councillor, I've just got an update from Marcus on that as well.
Yeah,
just on something, just to come back on your question, just in some good news. So he's been working really hard, especially on the winter festival that's coming up over Christmas, and he's secured some sessions at Stamford Bridge and the Brunswick Club and also with the Sands End Adventure Playground and some other groups as well in the south of the borough. So it's looking like for the Winter Festive Fun Programme, I'll try and get that right, is offering 3,690 places, of which 41% of them will be in the south of the borough. So I think
fantastic. I'm so pleased to hear that. Thank you so much for keeping that in mind while planning.
Yeah, so it definitely was picked up after the last meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's really helpful to have an immediate action result. Lovely. Thank you. Does anyone else have any corrections or anything else they'd like to add from last meeting? No. Good. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Can we agree the amended minutes of the previous meeting as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 4, the Youth Justice Service inspection outcome. I just wanted to start before I hand over by congratulating the team for an outstanding rating, and it was described as a confident and capable service. So brilliant. Please do cascade down my congratulations to the team. And I will be handing over to Jackie McShannon, who is our Strategic Director for Children's Services, and Amina Gordon, who's the Operational Director of the Children and Young People Service. Over to you both.
Thank you very much. So I have to say this is a thrilling and a very special outcome, and it reflects the positive experiences and outcomes for our children and young people, Hammersmith's children and young people involved in the criminal justice system. And very much it acknowledges the care, the compassion, and the child-centred approach, which is at the core of our work. And I want to give absolute credit to those frontline practitioners who are very much involved in the direct work with children and young people, their parents and their carers. It's a credit to all professionals that there's such a strong, emphatic acknowledgement of their skill and their expertise, and also their perseverance, because one of the strengths of our service is that we do not give up on children and young people. And in fact, as Amina well knows, even when some of those young people have aged out of the service or are moving on to adult services, we stay involved, and our practitioners very much go over and beyond, and the inspectorate pick that up. The service that we offer is very holistic, and I want to also pay tribute to the partnership, because one of the features of Hammersmith and Fulham is that very extended and rich offer across the piece, particularly from community-based partners, and I think that makes it very rich, and it means that the development and the design of services is very much an iterative process between community-based partners and ourselves. It also has to be said that it was my priority to ensure that youth justice services weren't in a silo and weren't operating out on their own. And I really want to thank Amina Gordon, who's the Ops Director, who's here now, because she has really accelerated that ambition in the way that she has helped integrate the youth justice services and all the fine work that they were doing into children's services, so that actually I can say very confidently that the whole of children's services, and I'm including commissioning, Peter's work, and that all of children's services have worked very collectively. Equally, there's a corporate approach, and we really can't forget the importance of the gangs unit and the work that they have done to enable our communities and to ensure that there is a rich and a very relevant dialogue and conversation about the direction of services. We offer such a strength and a strong approach, and we have such a strength-based approach that actually what again makes us unique is that we don't have to fit children into services. We can look at children's individual needs and their interests and their hobbies and their dreams, ambitions, and really direct them to the right, particularly mentoring, support and approach. So I'm going to hand over to Amina, who can give some of the sort of specific details. What I would say is that in London, we are one of 2 authorities with this outstanding judgment. It's quite a narrow bandwidth to get into it. The one next, which is good, has got a much wider. So, but actually, it's something really to celebrate, and to celebrate collectively, because while absolutely our practitioners are first and foremost in terms of their work. No team is an island, and having the backup and support collectively is what makes this very, very special. So my thanks to everybody involved. Congratulations. Thank you. Lena.
Thank you. So I did do a presentation that was in the PAC. So I don't know if you need me to show that up, because I'm probably going to have to join Teams, and I didn't want to do that while people were speaking in case that you have all seen it. So I can just read from my notes. It's entirely up to you.
It might be good if we can, unless this is going to be.
Shall I join and then?
Yeah, just so that anyone who's joining us can see the visual representation of it, but it depends. I'm just scooting to it now, Mina.
So
I'll
I'll
leave it
join
up to you.
so that you can, unless you, are you, yeah, I'll join.
Thank you.
I can bring it up.
Oh, can you? Oh, thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much.
That's really helpful. So the while Dave is bringing it up, I'll just start. So the inspection looks at 4 key areas. So the standards of organisation, so that's the leadership, staffing and the facilities. The management of children serving court sentences. So those been to court and the court have made those judgments around what those sentences should be. And children serving cautions or community sentences, which are often known as out of court disposals. And it also rated the quality of resettlement, which was a new area of focus from the HMIP, and one that could have affected your other judgments. So if you were considered not to be delivering on resettlement, that could have affected the overall judgment. So as you've all said, we got an outstanding judgment, the highest rating available. So we're really proud about that. We were also really proud, if we go on to the next slide, of the comment that was made by the Chief Inspector of Probation, Justin Russell. So he encapsulated really the essence of what we do here. So it's a dedicated, capable and confident service where children have every opportunity to move away from crime. So that whilst the partnership and the workforce is really important to us, actually to have that tangible impact on our young people is actually what we get up to do every morning. So that's really important for us that we've achieved that goal. And the next couple of slides, I've just identified some of the strengths. So I'm just going to go through my notes because if I read off that, it gets a bit dry. So my notes are hopefully a bit more getting to the grit of it. So the quality of planning and intervention were noted as a strength, and that's really important. So they noticed that our interventions were targeted to the individual needs of the children. They were co-produced and co-designed with our children. So we took a strengths-based approach, a child-first approach, but that didn't mean that we undermined the risk that these children pose either to themselves or to others in the community, and a real strength in planning and intervention to move them away from crime. So that was really important. And the strength of the child's voice was noted not only in their individual plans, so you could see that the child had engaged in their plan, they talked about what was going to work for them to either stop them reoffending or to progress with their education and things that were going to improve their outcomes. But also they saw evidence that the child's voice had helped to influence the way we delivered services and the way that we changed that. So that was really important too. Our Youth Crime Prevention Partnership, so effectively our Partnership Management Board, they noted that our youth crime prevention strategy that we've developed integrated really well with our early intervention strategy. So I think that's really important that, you know, under Jackie's leadership, we haven't dealt with these individual things in silos. So we had a youth crime prevention strategy. We made very sure that in our early intervention strategy that those children that become involved in the youth justice service were considered and held in mind when we were creating that. And the prevention work that you need to do with adolescents to avoid them needing to come into touch with the youth justice service was identified. So that's really another important point. But a comprehensive induction of our staff. So when you're delivering relational services, it's really important that the staff that come to join us in Hammersmith and Fulham understand the way we want to deliver services and our ethos around that, because other youth justice services or where they've experienced their practice might not practice in the same way. That can be hard to juggle when you've also got children that need a service quite quickly and you've got a gap in the system in your team. But they did note that we take time to induct new staff and that there's a strong learning and development ethos alongside robust supervision. And we also have joint supervision. So where children are known to other parts of the service, the Youth Justice Service and the Children's Social Work team will jointly have a supervision around that plan for that child and their family. So that's a coordinated approach. So again, not operating in silos. And the managers and staff felt valued, which is really important. To me, these are the things that are the
We've just lost sound.
So yeah, there's a bit of a problem with Zoom and like sharing this presentation. It keeps kind of crashing Zoom. So is it okay to just not?
Yeah, we can unshare
share
if
that.
it's compromising the sound, no problem.
So the strengths I'm pretty much with that, and you've got in your pack anyway, and I'm not going through them in the same order, so that should be fine. So Jackie mentioned in her introduction a range of mentoring options. So we have a wealth of people delivering, and they're able to deliver bespoke offers to our young people. So a real targeted, individualised offer to them to give them the best chance for change, and that's great. So you know, that does mean that those children can really connect with those people. They can support them into different areas of interest for them, and the views of our children are continually influential. In terms of delivering our services in a child first and systemic approach, they noted that was embedded, but we've also been able to influence the national system and national practice. So we currently do a systemic child first assessment for those children that haven't got court sentences, so those out of court disposal activities, and that's a strengths-based approach to them, and nationally they're looking at embedding that across. So that's really important. They've been able to influence that wider system. So in terms of recommendations, we didn't have many because obviously we're outstanding. So, but they did make, so they're broken down into 3 for the service. So the actual team, the Youth Justice Service team, and 2 for the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership. So you can see here, one of the areas that we do need to do better in is with our volunteers. And that was because with COVID and not being in person, some of those relationships eroded a little. The training opportunities they didn't think were as rich as they were previously. And they weren't connecting with the service in the same way. So we had already made plans to go back to hybrid meetings the way we are today and to improve our relationship and engagement with them, but that hadn't taken traction soon enough when they came in to do our inspection. So one of the recommendations was to review our working arrangements with volunteers to ensure that they are fully supported and used effectively, which we don't argue with. To improve communication and escalation routes to ensure that key messages on service delivery and data analysis reach the board and operational staff. So there was a little bit of a disconnect on our operational staff being able to articulate what the board might do if they raised concerns about practice. So I think it was just a gap in the communication. We had lots of evidence of escalation rates, so particularly Peter and I, for example, children not being in the right education provision, that would be escalated by my youth justice workers up through me, and Peter and I would be able to resolve that. And we had lots of evidence of that, but unfortunately our practitioners couldn't say what that looked like. So we're just going to make sure that they're really clear when they pass the baton to us, what then happens next. So review policies and guidance to ensure that they are set out explicitly how the service intends to meet all diversity needs, particularly where there is disproportionality. So that's just us being very specific about what our measures are. So I think our targets were there, but being really specific about what those particular needs are, how we're going to meet them and how we're going to measure them. In terms of the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership, they wanted to continue to work with partners in the Youth Justice Service to maintain the current health provision for the Youth Justice Service. So our health provision within the Youth Justice Service is resourced by some of the council money, some of our grant money, and also from health money. And what that enables us to do is have an integrated multidisciplinary team within our Youth Justice Service. So within there, we have a range of health support and able to support our children with SEND, which we have a higher cohort of in our Youth Justice Service. So they want us to be able to maintain that vision because they saw that as a strength, and develop our understanding of youth justice, children and families, the vision and priorities of the service and potential risks that can impact on delivery. So there was a bit of a disconnect with so although they could see the board was having lots of influence locally, they cited our joint working as a strength. They didn't feel that the members of the board could say what our priorities were. So although they were delivering against those priorities, they couldn't name them. So we're just going to do a bit of work around that. So what we've done to address that is we have to return an action plan with key measures to the HMIP, which we have done, and that has been accepted by them. So they don't need anything else from us. They might from time to time ask us how we're progressing. And obviously when they come back in, they will review it. But we will now monitor that. So that will be monitored through my normal quality assurance activity within the service and my performance data, audits, that whole range of quality assurance. And also the board will have oversight of that. So we will take that back to the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership periodically for them to test our activity and performance against it. Happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I have some, but I'm not going to abuse chair's privilege. Councillor Afzal Khan, do you want to go first?
Well, first of all, congratulations to the entire Youth Justice Service team for getting an outstanding. Well done. My question is, I'm trying to understand what kind of disproportionality was pointed out, and have the targets and measures around the policies been updated to meet all diversity needs and address this disproportionality?
Yeah, so the service is really good at identifying what our cohort looks like. So there are a range of issues within the cohort. So around school provision, what schools they're in, whether they're in an alternative provision, that would be considered as part of our disproportionality, looking at that. We have an overrepresentation of black and mixed black boys within the system, and we are looking at that, although that with the new census data, that is not as vast as we imagined it was prior to that. So it's actually a bit more in line with general population now, but is still higher than we would want it to be. So we're making sure that we track that and we look at that. And our young people that have SEND, so we know that that's a particular need of this cohort too. So making sure, and Peter and I are working on how we can ensure that those children are picked up earlier, so that then they don't even need to come to the Youth Justice Service attention, because we think that some of those issues not being identified early on and then leading to a breakdown in education could be one of the reasons why they find themselves in the Youth Justice Service. So those are the areas we're looking at.
Thank you so much.
I might just come on the back of that, Amanda, just to say that on the overrepresentation point, I wondered, I know that it mentioned about stop and search data and other data sets to kind of try and benchmark or triangulate how it was overrepresented. I wondered what other data goes into it and how it kind of compares, I don't know, regionally, whatever is the salient comparison. Other areas.
So in terms of the stop and search data, that's quite difficult for us to get a handle on. So we have been trying to work with our police colleagues for the whole time I've been here, almost 2 years now, coming in February. So there is a new, so that has actually become a priority for the community safety partnership, because they don't break down that data into child level data either, so it is everybody, so it's quite problematic. But the police do have a new person in post to be able to deliver against that, so it does mean our ability to triangulate is limited. So we are led by our own data and then matching that against general population, or resident population, sorry, to work out what that disproportionality is.
So they don't offer it. Yeah, sorry, Jackie.
I was just going to say that through the community safety partnership, there's been a lot of challenge to the police to provide that data, and they can do it, but not regularly. And the chief exec has also been made very strenuous overtures to the police, as have I, as the chair of the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership. So we have interrogated it to understand, but it's police data is a bit arcane, I think.
Yeah, it's often the case in the ward meetings as well. Maybe we could make a note, David, if that's okay, to perhaps discuss how we could support you as as councillors. I could speak to Councillor Harvey because it's often, if that would be helpful, just say what would be helpful.
Yes.
It's an area that we've been trying to get to the bottom of, like I said, for almost 2 years now, so it would be really helpful. Although the data is only one thing, so we are doing a lot of work through our relationships with the police, with our community, and that community voice about the impact of stop and search, because it doesn't. Obviously, if you've got an over-representation, that's a problem. But actually children representing how traumatic those experiences are to them. So we are doing a piece of work where police officers and children talk about from both of their perspectives what that feels like. So officers who maybe don't feel quite equipped as they could be to be able to do that stop and search and use the language they need to. And then children saying how they've experienced it and how traumatic it is. And that's been really useful to bring about some change in terms of practice. And that's probably going to be more effective than keep matching the data, but we still need to do that.
And presumably, if they've described an overrepresentation, the Youth Justice Service will have benchmark data. So do they?
Yeah, so we were very on top of that. That wasn't new to us. And the issue really for HMIP was quite specific. It was about wanting to make sure there was sort of a golden thread through our policy. So actually the work is happening on the ground around that. And I would also just mention the work that ASHE, the community-based organisation, are doing also with the community, but also with the police. So it is something that we pay a lot of attention to. But what really HMIP, they were wanting to see, to a certain extent, they wanted to see sort of certain boxes ticked as well. But also in our action plan, we have agreed that we need to make it more explicit in our policy. So the practice is there. It's more around the strategic policies being very, very articulate about that.
Okay.
It was one of the areas that we felt didn't quite reflect us as well as we thought it should. Yeah. And I think given the current climate, you can understand why the HMIP wouldn't have wanted to go away without making a comment about disproportionality in your plan. So it like Jackie says, they were looking for a very specific thing, and actually I think our practice has developed beyond that very specific data analysis they're looking at. Yeah, but we're still going to try and meet that need.
So that systemic practice does take absolute account of it, and yes, that was one of our challenges back to them. And we will be meeting with HMIP, I think, in 2 weeks' time, also just to reflect on parts of their methodology, but. We are always willing to learn, and we do accept that, there are elements where we just need to be absolutely clear about what we're doing. So, that there is learning for us here as well. Yeah,
that makes sense. Would anyone else like to come in on those points? Councillor Sokon, your hand is still raised. I think Zoom, it's a bit different to Teams in that you have to put it down manually. And for Marie, do come join us at the table if you'd like to, but you also can stay there. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any other? Yes.
Yeah, a couple not related to those points. I just wanted to ask, first of all, congratulations to such a wonderful integrated piece of work, because it's what we really want to see throughout the council, that sort of work that spreads through the community. So that's great. And congratulations for actually getting that all off the ground. Brilliant. I wanted to ask about the mentor staff. That sounds really good and strong. Are the mentors in-house, or do you use an agency?
So they're a range of third sector organisations, and that's why we've got such a broad offer, because there's a number of different organisations. And because we don't work in that silo approach, we have them through sort of the connections and pathways to that throughout different pieces of our system. So we've got an education strand. So there might be those that are better placed to support children with their education. We have some that have better skills in terms of criminal exploitation and understanding children who have experienced those difficulties. So those different pathways allow us to match the children to the intervention that's going to meet their needs.
I see. And again, just a note about the volunteer staff. So was it that purely just COVID, or because I know that it's a problem with volunteer staff? I've heard it before with the community champions, for instance. There's quite a lot of rumblings that they aren't recognised enough, to have too much work, and that's the thing. Is it purely just the COVID training?
I think it was just purely around the COVID issue, and they felt that they wanted to mobilise back to in-face meetings more quickly. there was a delay in that, one of them being the inspection itself, that we were due to do a session with them to get them all back together and then reintroduce the meetings, and then the inspection landed. So it seemed to be a disconnect over that time. And we had our training records from before COVID were strong. We had offered online training. So the volunteers have said that there wasn't an offer of training. There was, but we appreciate that might not have quite been what they were looking for and made them feel more disconnected. So, but we're confident that that is already addressed because they've now had their session. They're now back to hybrid meetings.
That's great to hear.
The timing of the inspection was everything. Actually, we were due to have a development day for the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership, and again, if we'd had the inspection immediately after that, and in fact, the inspectors arrived the day that was due, then actually people would have been able to articulate, in a way that the inspectors expected. Just what our priorities are, but actually I'm very clear that our partners are very engaged. I think it's an enormous strength. And because you talked about mentoring, there's some we commission, and I might say the wrong words, but Key for Life and Wipers and QPR, but also we have community-based organisations who come with offers, and so it is incredibly rich. And the Harrow Club have got a really fantastic offer that runs for 6 months for 40 young people, and it's linked into the Sands End Art Centre. So I think there really is there's a wealth of mentoring opportunities, which is again a great strength here, and a tribute to just the sort of collective purpose. And I know I've sort of said that, but I can't really overstate that. I think that's what makes here quite exceptional.
Okay, I had some extra questions. Jackie, I wondered, you mentioned when you were summarising around the gangs unit's impact, and also that resettlement was a new area, and I wondered if you could just go into a bit more for a bit of detail, impact, whether you needed to set up any new sections, new ways of working, new roles since the last inspection, if they were new since then.
They are new, absolutely. So the gangs unit is very new, and it followed on the very tragic murder of a young person in Hammersmith and Fulham in 2019. And this council responded by creating the gangs unit and also the law enforcement team. The gangs unit work very closely with the MENA's services. Matthew Hooper, who's head of community safety, and he's got a grander title, but he is also a vice chair with the MENA to Youth Crime Prevention Partnership. So that's been really the emphasis in the last 2 to 3 years, is putting everybody together in that sort of concerted approach. Again, the gangs unit work very closely with community-based partners like ASHE. The offer from the Sands End community centre has been really strong, and they've been really focused on with community partners developing community resilience and community capacity. So actually, we've been looking at developing sort of that expertise within the community, and particularly from people with lived experiences. And that means that we are hearing from parents and carers with lived experience, which is really critical. And so in addition to the work that the Youth Justice Service has commissioned, they also work in partnership to make sure that we're not working against each other. But I mentioned the Harrow Club and those 40 additional mentoring places. Again, that's been organised through the GVEU, and a whole range of activities, including late night youth clubs, work with Rebel Records, which is a fantastic initiative to enable young people to get access to state-of-the-art.
You know where it is all about it.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. And
unfortunately, it was I only read it in the report here. I've never heard about it, so it's not very well advertised.
Well, ASHE and the gangs unit do quite a lot of promotional activity in the south of the borough, and so yes, we work really closely with them. I can't say everything that the gangs unit do because I don't line manage it. And the resettlement work is, again, that's a new element of inspection. It's not quite graded, is it? It's graded, but it's yeah, it's great. It contributes to our judgment, and we have a very strong offer there, and we have staff who just I said about persevering, going the extra mile, they really do, and we knew that before the inspector came in, because that's the other bit that's really important. It's important that actually our own judgment based on our QA activity is endorsed by the inspectorate. So where we think of strengths, we hope that it would be disappointing if we hadn't identified them, or actually we missed activity. But did you want to say anything particular about the resettlement? Because I'd just say that we do work across London as well on resettlement.
So the resettlement area is probably the one that causes the most anxiety, with that being a new area for the HMRP to look at. And as I said, so if you got an inadequate judgment on resettlement, you weren't able to get an outstanding overall, that could have impacted. So we were pretty confident that we were going to get good in that area because of the strength of the work that we do. So our youth justice service and our leaving care service worked really hard to make sure that all of our young people were settled, and that sometimes we had some really difficult accommodation being ready and then not being suitable and having to make alternative plans very quickly. But HMRP were able to see how we worked together and how we resolved that, and to get an outstanding judgment in that area is particularly amazing, actually. So as I said, we were confident we would get good. That wasn't because I didn't think our practice was outstanding, that's because I knew how difficult it was to reach that target of outstanding. So the fact that they found that outstanding, and actually because we have really high expectations for our young people. So yeah, we were really proud of that.
Amazing. Much. Marie, do you want to come in? And you were saying that maybe the word hadn't got out about some of the offers to the community in South.
Yes, as an advocate living on an estate with young people, it's the first time I heard about it. And again, that's why I'm here. I'm here to ask some questions. Who's the makeup of the Crime Prevention Partnership? I've never heard of it. I've never read it anywhere. Corporate Parenting Board, never heard of it. Fulham Learning Partnership. So there are lots of things I have picked up in this report. And the one in Sands End, where are these things happening? This is what I would like to know. How are we, because again, I'm known all over the place and I ask questions. How are these things getting out there?
Marie, do you want to just say a little bit about what those how your community nodes, as it were, all the things you're plugged into? Because if word's not out on the street, that's important for us to know. We can work on that. That's important to know.
I am the chair of my estate, Lancaster Court Estate Resident Association. I'm also part of the Safer Neighborhood Board in Walham Green and Parsons Green, with all these new things. And I go to these meetings and I hear nothing. And I've heard nothing mentioned about any of these things. Yeah. And even in my church, I'm part of the church parish council. And in Sands End, having a session on a Friday night with the record people from 9 to midnight. I thought, where did that come from? Okay. Again, so there are lots of things that I've picked up here. Yeah. It's not, and first, congratulations. I must put that out very well. And I'm a champion for Hammersmith and Fulham, regardless of what I have to criticize. But what's important, partnership and working together in silo, because I think these things sound like they're in silo.
Well, some of them are new, and colleagues can speak to it more, but some of it is kind of like relatively like new reviews of things we've done for some of these groups. But your point, the spirit of your point is well received. So I think we can make a note to make sure that we're just disseminating some of the work that we're doing, particularly as our practice is so good, and make sure that community leaders across the parish know what's happening. But I'll let Alex respond.
In terms of the Youth Justice Service, that is a targeted offer. So those will be the children that have come to our attention. So I would, they're not things that we would publicise within the community necessarily, because you have to be in the service receiving that service. But in terms of our preventative work,
Yes.
we would hope that you're aware of that.
Because
And-
we have to do prevention before we do treatment. And what we're doing, to me, it's back to front. We're treating.
If we let Amina just address it, and then we can come back to you, Maureen. You can say whatever you input at that point.
So in the presentation this evening, because it is just on the inspection
Mhm.
and that targeted offer to children that have become involved, we haven't looked at the breadth of the offer in terms of our prevention and early intervention. That is part of our early intervention
Right,
strategy.
I need
And
to see it.
yes, and we have just refreshed our early intervention strategy, and we are now mobilising that offer, and we're tendering new provisions within that. So I think that's probably something that we can come back and share with you and provide some assurance for.
Yes, because it's very important for me as I'm saying as an advocate.
Yes.
And they do come and ask me questions, and sometimes I do have the answers and other times I don't. That's why I'm here, and that's why I read every report that comes out.
Yes. We need you.
Jackie, do you want to just come in as well?
Yes, so some of the things that I've referred to don't, says, Amina says, sit in with the youth justice services or children's services, and actually are run by the Gangs Violence and Exploitation Unit, who work very closely with community partners and
Sorry, who are community partners, man?
well, they work with.
Give it a pause
So-
for a
so-
second, Maria, and then we'll
Marie,
come back to you.
I won't know because I don't line manage that, but they ASHE, they work very closely, they commission ASHE to work with parents and carers where children have experienced youth violence, and they are commissioned to do that. So I'm repeating to you work that I know that's happening, but I don't orchestrate that work. So for example, they have had coffee mornings, and they have sort of have created a safe space. They celebrated Eid earlier this year. So I'm talking about work that sits under really the auspices of the Community Safety Partnership, but we are cited on it because we are all linked in. And I guess in the old days, we might not have been able to talk about it, but then of course it sounds as if I'm directing it more than I am, but it's very much, we have a youth crime prevention strategy, and that's a new strategy that was developed earlier this year to bring all of this together. I understand that's published. We need to check in case it's not, but that really is the overriding strategy, and that again sort of sits across all the services, but particularly underneath the Community Safety Partnership.
And sorry, last one, and because I heard you talk about the LED team.
Yeah.
Because again, they have, in terms of antisocial behaviors, but this, I don't know if they were part of this.
No, they weren't. They
No,
weren't.
this is quite specific, this bit, very about, but I think your general point, I was probably not directed that side of the room so much, but if we can relay on your behalf that actually some of the stuff that's happening, some things with children and adults obviously has to be kept sort of carefully managed because it's highly sensitive, but things that we can talk about, where we can go around and talk to people in communities about it, we'll sort of report that back to the teams who manage that outreach, and let's maybe do a bit of a sort of on the road with residents meetings or whatever would be useful.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, great.
So may I just answer your question about the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership? So who's on it? So I chair it, and Amina and Matthew Hooper, who's head of, I don't know what his title is, Safer Communities, is a vice chair. And we've got a range of statutory partners. So we have to have probation on it. We have police, health. Peter represents education. We have some education colleagues. Again, we invite community representatives such as ASHE. We have Young Hammersmith and Fulham, and their chief exec has assumed a role which we created as youth voice champion, and we bring in the youth council. And so at various times we've had QPR presenting. We've various people come and presented. We've had Imperial present research. But it is very targeted. It is targeted at supporting those young people who are in the criminal justice system, where some of what I referred to today are trying to prevent young people coming into the criminal justice system, and having that dialogue to look at what services we can do, as you said.
And Matthew is a chief officer of Safer Neighbourhoods and Regulatory Services.
Yeah, that's my
But I think definitely the explanation is better.
What's the age range we're discussing here?
So our children are up to 18, so 10 to 18. Yes, yeah, that's the age of criminal responsibility in the UK at the moment.
We don't have many children that young in our system, so but that's the criminal age of responsibility. We tend to have.
Please let me equally congratulate the team for the outstanding work you've done, and I'm quite happy that with the co-production with the children into for the agency and all those work. I'm glad that the ones almost leading it with you, and that's really great work. So thank you very much.
And noted, Marie, we will I've noted that. I'll follow up with you and we'll make sure that we've connected you to Matt.
And I won't be forgetting, you know that, Ellen.
Absolutely, I know. Good.
I was going to ask about a related point, just about signposting young people at risk. Could we not have something on our website? Just
used to
agencies to obviously not the people who are at risk of becoming in with crime. And what if you, for as a parent or a teacher, they're worried, where would they go to?
So we have a number of those resources already on our websites, but it might be helpful for us to signpost you guys and have a look and establish
support.
The information service on the information service, and also. Again, one of the advantages and, of referencing so widely about what's around is ensuring, part of the problem is that we've got to ensure that practitioners know what's available, because actually there's so much, sometimes people don't get heard.
Someone has to keep up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually Peter's tasked with his keeping the family information service up to date, but also we've now got a new role, which is head of early help that sits under Amina. And but we've got to make sure that everybody is cited. And that's what I said about earlier about one of our ambitions is to make sure we're all working together. And previously, and in some places you might find the youth justice service sort of sits outside children's services. Increasingly that's changing, I have to say, because most directors, children's services and operation directors absolutely see them as children first and foremost, but just making sure, and some of our meetings are really about that, Marie. They're about checking that everybody is aware. Sometimes I'm not aware, or there's a new initiative and we have to make sure that everybody's cited. So it's information sharing as well as analysing our performance and looking and hearing about what young people or those parents and carers families are saying about need.
What's the ratio between male and female?
It's largely male. It's predominantly male. Yeah, that's very strong. I'm just conscious Nandini's going.
Yes, so sorry, Nandini, go for it.
No, I think most of the questions I wanted to ask was covered. I was just trying to understand, did they ever look at the role of schools in all this? Like, was there any question or any inspection or any kind of analysis around that?
So they looked at the education routes for our children very, very closely. And Peter and I worked together really strongly around making sure that our children in the youth justice cohort have a really good education offer. So trying to make sure that they stay within school and don't have disruption to their education, but when there becomes a risk or a need that means that they need an alternative provision, that's at a really high level. So there is intense scrutiny over that, and something that we continue to work very closely on to improve the outcomes for our children.
Thank you.
Sorry, Nandini, just the other thing, one of the things that we work with Peter and through Peter at schools is to, and I think Amina spoke to this earlier about really, we have to, by the time children, young people are in the criminal justice system, collectively, we've in some way failed them. And so we have to make sure that we're working with our children, young people, and all services, all agencies, which is why we went to the Health and Wellbeing Board last year to say anybody who's in contact with children, young people needs to be working hard to understand their needs, to make sure that any additional needs are identified and attended to. We need to think about a trauma informed practice so that we respond to children and young people. We know that a lot of our children and young people in the youth justice system have speech and language needs. We know that they're not always able to explain themselves to magistrates. We have a brilliant magistrate sits on the Youth Crime Prevention Partnership. I have to say, all members of the partnership are so engaged. It's deeply impressive. But actually, we need to look at how we help people become aware of adverse childhood experiences that have impacted on outcomes for those children and young people. So it starts way before children and young people come into the youth criminal justice system, but this inspection is focused on those who are in it. That's what I just need to be clear about.
Is there a pattern where the majority of those students who enter the crime system, whatever you want to call it, are they in the care system or they have families and homes? And I mean,
no.
Is there a pattern?
No. So there are often unmet needs, whether it's mental health or might be special education needs that have not been identified. They're not in the criminal justice system because they're in the care system, but some.
But I'm just wondering, are they there?
No, many of the young people are known to children's social care anyway for a range of needs. You know, there may have been prolonged stress or distress in a family. There are lots of different factors, so they will often be known to a MENA service. Some will be cared for children or care experienced children.
So different backgrounds, different reasons. It's very sad. I mean, when you tell me a 10-year-old, oh God.
We don't have many 10-year-olds, but that's the age range that we work with. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just Nadia, you have your hand up.
Well, thank you very much. It's probably a sort of a daft thing to ask, but I wondered whether sort of peer mentoring has become quite a thing, and I wondered whether there's any initiatives where, I mean, first of all, congratulations on the outstanding judgment. That's fantastic news for Borough. I wondered whether there were any opportunities for the young people that are part of the youth parliament to actually be involved with, with the youth justice service in a way that they might provide peer mentoring. Particularly, I mean, the age was just mentioned, and it seems, well, quite low, particularly sort of in the younger age groups, whether you think it's sensible for peer-to-peer mentoring to take place, and would that be sort of, because I know there's a lot of youth work going on, there's a lot of sort of inspiration and sports activities involved in that, and I know that the police has their own kind of outreach officers, but I wondered whether there were sort of inspirational stories where, younger peers could actually serve as an inspiration and sway those who may otherwise choose not a very savoury path, be dissuaded from it.
I'll hand over to the team shortly, but we had a corporate parenting board last week, which had a very heartwarming stories from some young people who attended about exactly this, Nadia, on mentoring and how it was a kind of like a mutually enriching thing. So I'll hand over to the team.
Yes, so young people don't always choose to be involved in the criminal justice system. There are lots of circumstances and life circumstances, peer relations, the environment that impact on children and young people. So dealing with complex set of situations. The mentoring is very, as I said, it's a very, very rich offer, and various mentoring projects may involve people who've been through the criminal justice system. We try to ensure that we're listening to children and their youth voices heard. Matching them with young people in the youth council that might not be appropriate, because actually they're very young and they're still evolving and going through it. And actually, what we don't want to do is set up any kind of sense of these are young people who are doing it right and you're not. But actually, we are interested in people who've been through the system, and so actually and have a bit of distance between being through the system and their experiences. And actually, you do see very many people who've been involved in the criminal justice system coming back, not necessarily, I'm not thinking of any particular project, but we see that in, for example, young adults who've been involved in gangs coming back to work with young people involved in gangs. I'm not thinking of any particular project here, but yes, there's the mentoring, the idea of the mentoring is to offer lots and lots of different routes and matching so that it's appropriate to the young person. I don't know.
That's great.
Great, thank you. I'm just mindful of time, and I want to make sure we look at the other items, but essentially we can pick this conversation up with the action we've already noted around making sure we disseminate some of this great practice into communities, including Lancaster Court, and of course, just to once again reiterate how very impressive, particularly given new categories that are being assessed, this outstanding rating is. Brilliant. Okay. I will move to item 5, the Corporate Parenting Board review, and hand over to Amina again.
Thank you. So Peter and I were trying to look, we don't seem to have a link to be able to get on for me to share, but you do have it in your pack, and it is a very short slide deck for you anyway. And this is really just for noting, just to let you know of the change, and so that you as members of CPAC can think about what you want us to bring back to evidence that the change has been effective, essentially. So the Corporate Parenting Board is in Hammersmith and Fulham is committed to ensuring that every child who is within our service of being looked after or a care leaver has the best start in life, grows up to feel cherished, love, and realises their full potential as a young person. So they're our priorities for all our young people, but we know that children looked after need even more effort and attention around those areas. So what we looked at was the Corporate Parenting Board during the pandemic had gone online. We've seen the engagement of our young people wane a little around that through obvious reasons. But we also had a bit of a disconnect where we had a steering group where all the business was, which meant that children weren't necessarily having that direct influence over changes in policy and business. So they were having, their voice was heard, and they were engaging with us at some level, but there were bits of it that they were missing out on and that we were missing out on from their views. So what we sought to do was to reinvigorate the model coming out of the pandemic, to get back to in-person meetings and to think about how we engaged our young people as effectively as we could. So we did a review of the board. We looked at broadening the membership, increasing scrutiny and challenge, introducing subgroups for the young people to be able to provide that challenge to the board. So essentially, when what we do is there's a session with the young people that counsellors can also attend. So that will be on a thematic issue, and they will be able to, the first one that we had with the young people was around the health offer. So we had people from the Children Looked After nurse, other parts of the health system, met with our young people. And we also had one of our team managers with them, and they talked about the health offer, and then they brought that back to the Corporate Parenting Board. They came and sat and told us about that. So what that means is they don't have to sit through the whole meeting, which can be a bit tiresome for young people, but they can be engaged and they can influence the changes of the service delivery model. We also wanted to relaunch our Corporate Parenting Pledge, and we wanted to make sure that we had an improved website and social media presence for our young people so that they knew what their offer was. And just to check in on our priorities. So our priorities are to feel settled and belong. These have been chosen with our young people, to be safe, happy and healthy, and thrive as adults. And we decided that they still very much resonated with them, and those were the ones that we wanted to continue. So I said a bit about how that how we reorganised those two elements of the meeting, and they are in your slides as well, so I won't go over those. But we have also agreed what those thematic sessions will be going forward for the year. So we've done health. Our next one will be around housing, education, employment and training, safety and resilience, and then transitions. So that will give us the opportunity to have the child's view and to influence the service delivery in the system. So Councillor Robotham was there when our young people came to deliver, and hopefully can sort of share with you how well that's going. It is still embryonic. We've got a few teething problems around how we are delivering that to make sure, but we are already having tangible outcomes from that board and the way it's delivering. So we had from that health discussion, we have clear actions coming out of that we will be able to track. The Corporate Parenting Board has had a direct influence on service delivery for this year, and that's exactly what the aim was. So I think I've covered all of the main points about that.
Brilliant. I wanted to echo, I mean, I'm a member of this board, and it just brings it to life in another dimension to see young people there and to hear exactly how they describe things they've experienced or views they have is just fascinating. And it's just, you know, it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words. What just a meeting with them is worth like endless numbers of meetings, because they just, and how conscientious they are is really striking. You know, they both have their experience and they've reflected on behalf of many other people as well, and it's really very very humbling stuff. So it's a meeting I really look forward to. Do we have any questions or comments or around the room about how that meeting's going? Councillor Khan.
Just a comment, because I was at the Corporate Parenting Board meeting when these two young men came in and they spoke about a recent workshop, and it was wonderful to hear the positive ideas that they'd come up with, and also to address that issue that was raised earlier in the meeting about peer mentoring. And that comes up when you do more of these workshops and get more young people together. Some of them who are more mature will be able to peer mentor the others. And I think it's a fantastic initiative and direction that's been taken. So well done there. Just wanted to say that. And I would love to attend the next meeting. The workshop whenever you have it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Any other comments? I was maybe just going to ask about how it had, if you wanted to give a few examples of how involving them had led to kind of like practical changes or different implementation, just things to bring some colour to the practice.
Yeah, so in terms of the health offer, so that them being in the room, so some of those changes have already started, but being able to strengthen that that's the right way for us to go. So for example, we ask children who are looked after to have a health assessment every year. If your child lives at home and they're not well, you don't tend to take them to the GP once a year just for an MOT, you know, but our children looked after have to have this assessment. It's something that we have to report to the DFE on. And then being able to talk about how that feels and how they would like it to happen means that we now have a different offer, and sometimes they are seen in, you know, places within the community because they're not having an intimate medical exam and they know what they're going to talk about. So if it's containable in that way, they will meet them in the community, they will meet them after school, later on in the day. So we're able to have a bit more of a bespoke offer to our young people. So that's been influential. And from, sorry, Jane.
I was going to give you another example, but
no, go on, that's fine.
So, for example, the Care Leavers Hub that is in development. You know, young people hadn't, you know, talked about not having a resource centre, not having a centre to go to. So it was an administration pledge in the last administration, which we are bringing to fruition. And Amina and the team have been working really hard to, hopefully it's going to be live next, is it January? It keeps moving slightly. But that again would be an example of what corporate parenting has achieved. And we are also working as part of PAN London on a sort of care leavers compact, looking at what the offer to care experienced young people is around housing. We've been able through, again, listening to young people, the Corporate Parenting Board has achieved a much greater access to tenancies for care experienced young people. And that's an absolute tangible shift, even in the last couple of years. And we've been investing in more local semi-independent provision, again, because young people tell us they want to be close to the borough and they don't want to be placed out of the borough unless there's a very good need or there's a sort of a relevant reason. But we're working Pan London looking at our offer, which compares well to other local authorities, but we strive for excellence, and actually we want to stretch it. So there'll be other work that will be put in place in response to that.
And the confidence of our young people means that we have got those young people engaging. We're on the London stage and they attend those workshops around what they're calling the London Compact, and they're being able to influence that. And that's testament to the work that we do with them in these workshops, and to be able to help them, create their voice and bring that to the table.
Brilliant. That's great. Councillor Officer, was that a second question? No, all good. I was just going to say that it also, I guess you have to borrow, or you have to go through people who have trust in communities. So also just helps to deliver it, doesn't it? It's like amazing because you've got this whole network of young people who are brought in, and they can make sure that whatever the resource is, it's really maximised. So goes to your point as well, Marie. So we'll make sure that we spread that far and wide as well.
What's important to us is that we have a diverse voice within that. So our workshops, we're trying really hard to make sure that we get all of our young people, we target all of our young people, they're all given the opportunity to engage. I've worked in a number of authorities where you just get the same 2 people wheeled out. So those 2 young men were remarkable, but we wouldn't necessarily want them to come back and be the voice of the workshop next time. Everyone gets the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I was just going to finish saying that we had our Children in Care Awards event Monday last week, and thank Councillor Rowbottom and Councillor Afzal Khan for attending. And again, that event was very much developed by our children and young people, our care for children, our care experience young people. It reflected their interests. They, as Amina said, their design, the way they wanted the evening to appear and present. And again, that's just sort of co-production, but it also is a wonderful opportunity for the young people to experience themselves as community with parents and with their carers and their social workers and support staff, and that creates that sense of genuine corporate parenting, so that young people know that we all, and it's a bit like I said about youth justice, but knowing that we're all there and we're all working together. So that was the first time in person since I've been here, so this was lovely.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I was going to bring it up at the end, but I wanted to thank everyone involved in it, because as you said, you have everyone under one roof. It's a really kind of like joyful atmosphere. You've got amazing artwork that kids have done who are like 9 years old, 8 years old.
Almost nine,
not even 9, which I was emphatically told was for her dad, not something I could exhibit in the borough. There was also, people who recorded songs who were some of our sort of supportive stuff being played. It was amazing, and it really marks an era of, although we all have to be cautious, where we can bring people together in person again and just have community under one roof. And it was it was a pleasure. I know that Councillor Afzal Khan will feel the same, because we talked about how great we thought it was. But do come in if you'd like to as well.
Well, it was very nicely organised, and these kinds of events are necessary because children looked after who are going through the system, we want them to leave with a lot of positivity and positive experiences at the end of the day. And the best part for me was to see these young adults almost, go up on stage and confidently share their experience and their story, the hardships that they had, but how they had overcome, the community around them that had helped them overcome those difficulties, and how 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line, they are successful individuals and what helped them through it. And it was nice to see that people from the corporate parenting board had stayed in touch with them and been their support system for many, many years, even after they'd left care. And that was amazing to see. And I think that kind of inspiration that comes from these children having made a success of their lives is important, that they have the opportunity and events like these to share that. So that for me was the takeaway. That was a very positive experience, and it shared success stories, and that was wonderful. So thank you for organising that. That was good.
Thank you, and Councillor, that just reminds me. Thank you for reminding me. Really, Nadia, what you said earlier about mentoring. Actually, that's what we saw. We had young people who were care experienced, who were, were now young adults, talking about their experiences, as Councillor has said, and actually that's, very positive note, recognising the pain that some of the young people are experiencing and the stress and distress, but actually talking about, how it can be overcome. So it was lovely. So yeah, Nadia, that's an example.
That's really encouraging. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to hear.
And also kind of just banish stigma, just in the essence of the event, which I thought was very powerful. So thank you. Anything else that people want to reflect on to do with the corporate parenting boards before we move to item 6? Okay. So the learning partnership, I'm going to hand over to, yes, Amina, thank you. Duly discharged from duty. Thank you very much. So I will hand over to Peter Haylock, who's our operational director for education and SEND. And I don't know whether Georgina is still.
No, me.
Perfect, perfect, lovely. We're just handing over to Peter in the room, in real life. Over to you, Peter.
So thank you, everyone. I won't talk for too long because I think the learning partnership is fairly self-explanatory. But just to explain a couple of things that maybe don't come across in the slides. The first thing is that this is very much a internal school-facing partnership. So it's not necessarily something that goes out to parents or to other people, but it's a way of getting our schools to continue to work closely together, which they always have done. But as we move through into kind of different funding models and different funding streams. So at the moment, up until this academic year, we have had funding that's come through from national government as a school improvement grant. That has slowly disappeared over time and now disappears completely from April 2023. So the learning partnership has been set up as a mechanism to continue schools working to continue to have schools working together, which they've always wanted to do and have done, and make sure that there is the necessarily kind of funding and the systems that can sit behind that to be a success. So at the moment, the Hammersmith and Fulham Learning Partnership is very much focused at primary, because that's where our maintained schools sit in the main. And it mainly focuses, I don't like the term, but it mainly focuses on our mainstream schools because the special schools require something slightly different in terms of the delivery that exists. And as you can see from the slides, the aims of the program are quite wide-reaching, but it's very much about training teachers. It's about developing kind of good practice, sharing those models, that kind of principle of peer-to-peer support. And it's very kind of iterative and evaluative in terms of its process. So over time, the intention is that we continue to grow and develop. Even in its embryonic stage, we've had great opportunities to kind of trade some of our CPD to schools in Kensington and other places where they don't necessarily have the same sorts of offer. We're very much looking at kind of subject networks. So, for example, the geography leads in a range of different primary schools would get together, and we look to kind of develop that model. So essentially trade what we can deliver so that we can offer more to our own schools. We're also looking to bring in much of the work that is done with mainstream schools in terms of their SEN delivery. So that sits within the learning partnership as well. And it's also the learning partnership is becoming our main vehicle in terms of communicating key messages to schools. So some of the things that we were talking about in terms of the preventative models that may sit within the youth justice system would be types of things that we would share with schools through the kind of learning partnership. So they've got that option. There's very much a kind of focus on staff well-being and making sure that teachers are looked after. Teachers are hard to get, so when you get some good ones, you need to make sure you keep them and give them that opportunity to grow and develop. And that's kind of one of the kind of core purposes of the learning partnership moving through. So the principles are the key really. Is all schools have opportunity to participate. So that's whether you're an academy or whatever is completely irrelevant really. We want to give that opportunity to all of our members of staff because all of our children deserve to get the best. We are looking in the future to develop a secondary model, which would need to be traded to them because obviously we don't have the funds that come directly to us. And that's a model that we're kind of developing at the moment and kind of moving through in one of the next stages. but we're very much kind of focused in on the primary in this kind of first phase to make sure that that's really, really strong. And then that's where the kind of the opportunity to develop the momentum around sustainable, scalable, cost-effective partnership will come from. So there's been a lot of work done since September 2022 until, well, December, but until now. So all of the startup funding has been identified. The offer has been communicated out to all of the primary schools and been very well received, and there's been really good take up. I will get a kind of really clear set of data in the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks as in terms of which schools have been engaging, which schools haven't, where we need to kind of further target, etc., and kind of like steer the communication a bit more cleverly, shall we say, so that we're engaging with everybody. We need to get the steering group up and running, which will involve a kind of range of different stakeholders and sort of make sure the team are kind of held accountable. But so apart from that, all of the other actions that we plan to do have been in place. We've also, through Schools Forum, looking at how we secure the funding moving forward for April 2023, when things start to become more of a challenge. So yeah, so there's a wide range of different things that we've got kind of up and running. It's really open to any questions.
Right, lovely. I will just to, oh, Eleanor, in fact, do you want to open? Unmute. Yeah.
Yes, I was interested when you said that it was now mostly primary schools, but when it goes to secondary schools, when you start to focus on the secondary level, will you think of providing specific subject report support? We used to get, I'm speaking as a retired teacher in the borough, but there used to be subject advisors, and which used to support people a lot. It's in the schools a lot, and I wondered whether you would consider that sort of focus.
I think it wouldn't necessarily be a subject advisor, because we wouldn't gain enough funds to employ that many people, which is obviously a shame, but it would be very difficult. It would be more the idea of running subject specific professional development. So we'd look at some consultancy and looking at kind of bringing in kind of national experts, etc., to be able to deliver sessions for staff. We would more than likely target it to what the schools ask for. So, for example, if there was a very specific, what we tended to find, for example, within multi-academy trusts, is where they have one member of staff perhaps teaching A-level economics or something like that within a particular area, it's quite challenging for that member of staff to kind of work by themselves in a bit of a silo. So by looking outwards towards some of our other partners, it may be that we can buy in, especially with teams and things like that, we can buy in some subject specific support for people who are a little bit sort of by themselves. Where you tend to have bigger departments in schools, for example, English, maths or humanities, etc., they would tend to kind of look to do something like that internally. So I think it would be very much led by the schools as to what they would want, because they would be the people who would need to pay for it.
Thank you.
Also, Eleanor, it's about helping to create peer-to-peer support.
Yeah.
So if there is a school that, for example, has a great strength in geography or phonics, that we would try to be the brokers that put them in contact with schools that maybe are struggling in that area or requesting assistance. The idea is that it also formalizes that peer-to-peer support as well.
And that can also help with staff retention, because that obviously that person feels really well valued and there's new opportunities, which means that they would look to be happy to stay around a bit longer.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the economy. You mentioned economies of scale. If you're benefiting from other boroughs' good practice or shared endeavour, not least, some of the cultural assets you mentioned about science, art, music, theatre and dance that, could be shared across London, and maybe even, I know we all have key worker packages, and you mentioned about retaining teachers or key worker staff, and it's critical. So it would be really interesting. What I had deduced, or I'd assume from in terms of the timeline of Peter, is that it's all forming strategic level, then you have the steering boards and it will disseminate down from there. So it's all been kind of hatched, and it will kind of like in the next few months or whenever that in that timeline, it will actually sort of start impacting and changing practice. So it's in early stage formation. So interesting, and again about how we just pull everyone into that piece, but that's it's great to hear that it's happening, especially when it
is early stages, but it also it's actually developed much quicker than I think I'd hoped in that. So I think it's something that schools have really valued and have really got on board with. So that's been a real positive.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Sakon.
Thank you for the report, Mr. So what I'm wondering is that currently, how many schools do you have as members? And then, you know, that schools are competing at the end of the day with each other, for students. And so what are the benefits that this delivers to the schools? And what is the incentive for them to work with other schools or buddy up with other schools that might not be doing as well, and for other schools that are doing very well to share their good practices? So I'm just a bit concerned about what your membership's like currently, and then what really is the interest, because if I understand correctly, with multi-academy academies, they will work with other academy schools within their network, and so for them there is no real vested interest to work with other schools than those within their academy group. So how will you sell this concept or this partnership to schools who are already part of an academy network?
So all primary schools are included, because in the first year it's something that's been funded internally through some work that was done prior to me arriving. From next academic year is something that we're looking at to be funded through kind of the delegated schools grant. So that's something that will come via Schools Forum. Bearing in mind the kind of the nature of the kind of the school estate, it is a real challenge to always engage with the academies. However, what we have noted is that they are very positive in terms of attending meetings and being involved, and by bringing in areas where they have a vested interest, such as safeguarding, such as SEND, you get the kind of buyback in a different direction. And I think it has to be broad enough to cover everyone's interests and everyone's areas or potential gaps. And I think it would be, I suppose, quite sort of a strong point for an academy trust to say that they had no gaps and no kind of useful kind of point to be involved. So at the moment it's gone very positively, but as I say, the data will be coming through because it's in its kind of first inception this term as to precisely how many schools have engaged, etc. And as I said, by bringing in our kind of SEND support offers, which is not something that academy trusts in general are able to offer their schools, and things around sort of, for example, safeguarding, governor training, etc. It kind of widens the offer and makes the opportunities sort of slightly more varied and more different.
Did you want to come back?
Thank you. I think that's what I wanted to hear, because the offer has to be wider than what individual successful schools can do on their own, because it will only work if really good successful schools were part of this partnership, because then there's a learning from schools that might not be doing as well. Learning schools that are doing that well and have that outstanding rating, and that sharing of knowledge is essential, and that kind of upgrades the standard of schools across the borough. So the offer has to be good enough for these successful, outstanding schools or good schools to come on board.
I think when it comes to primaries, for example, subject specialism is really difficult because the teachers
because they only have numeracy and literacy.
Teachers don't tend to be subject specialists, so being able to provide that support again is something that is beneficial to every school.
I do have some views, not least as a governor of the school, but I will go in order of people who put their hands up, which is Nandini and then Councillor Richardson and then Marie, Councillor Richardson, which I was looking at the screen at the time, or Peter, like a one shot over there. Maybe we'll go Nandini,
I'm happy
Marie,
to go last,
then Councillor Richardson. Nandini, over to you.
I'm slightly confused. So should the schools pay to be part of the partnership? So for example, if this school wants some expertise in geography or whatever, should they, is there any paid subscription, or slightly confused with that? And then also slightly confused with all the governor training, etc., because you do have bodies providing that, you have Senko forums, etc. So would all that go and anything be replaced by this partnership?
No, so nothing is disappearing, but we will bring things much closer together, so it's far more coordinated for schools, and they can access things through the same kind of routes. So things like the Senko partnerships will become part of the learning partnership, and they will be available for all schools through that. So the intention is that eventually, in another year's time, the offer will become traded to schools and will something that they will need to buy into. And the intention is that between now and then, it's something that schools see is incredibly vital to kind of what they're doing and what they're delivering, so that they understand the kind of value of it and go from there, which is why it's important to bring in some of our other key offers as well as a part of that. So the moment is something that for the primary schools is available kind of as part of our standard offer, shall we say. The secondary schools, we offer some services for free at the moment, and we need to look at how we trade those from next academic year.
Thank you.
So Nandini, I would say two things. One is that the development of the learning partnership has been around for a while, but actually it was halted because of COVID. And the second bit, so it does exist in other local authorities, and it really formalizes the relationship and that we do have with our schools and that they have with one another. But Peter talked about the school improvement grant, a particular grant is actually called the local authority monitoring or brokering grant. That disappears, and so our capacity to offer those services for free disappears as well. So that's why it will become a traded service. So we have this year to test whether it's something schools want, whether they want to pay for, whether they value. That will be schools' prerogative to make that decision. But if they choose not to do it, we won't be able as a local authority, regrettably, to offer that ourselves. And that is, none of us agree with the grant going, and there were lots of representations made nationally about that, and you yourself will know through various presentations we've done about the work that we've done with all our schools, with academies during COVID, and the role the local authority had in supporting our schools and coordinating the support the schools were, as we will all agree, magnificent during it, but there was a role for the local authority. So unfortunately, but equally, it's that grant goes, but this is an opportunity, and and I think that it's one that I think schools offer a lot to each other. We while we have a very complex landscape, we have a brilliant community of schools, and they really do work in partnership, one to the other, and so this just formalizes it. And I think we're very lucky. Our academies, our different federated schools, our maintained schools, they're all part of the Hammersmith and Fulham family or community of schools.
Thank you.
I'll go next to Marie. Did you want to come in, Marie?
Because I was wearing my other hat here as a governor and going around, I think we have already started working together with schools and sharing. And I think that is also very good practice too. So that will embed in the
Exactly right.
Yes, as you say, Peter. And so I'm in total support of this partnership. The only concern I have at the moment, and as we all, is money. And that is going to be our biggest challenge.
Yep.
And although he said we're getting money in education, but I don't know which section of education we are getting it, and that's going to be our challenge. And again, primary schools in Hammersmith and Fulham do work together. They are not in any isolation as other places. And I know Mr. Haylock, Pete, he's going to make sure that that is maintained on our behalf. Yes.
Be warned.
It's a warning, isn't it?
It's as I've understood it, I mean,
What's
this
the
is where we have,
thing, but it's a warning.
this is where, steep cuts and people, it's a coalition of the willing. And there are things, you can use soft power in these times. We don't necessarily have hard power. We can't, magic more money up, but we can find slicker ways. And actually, some school might have a bigger estate that's available on a weekend that it can use for, some may have an amazing digital platform or a really great maths thing for homework, etc. So I think, particularly during COVID, it's sharing, and that's the spirit of this in a climate of adversity, without meaning to make too political a point. Great. Okay. Any other points on mine? Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Of course. Councillor Richardson, last but not least, etc.
First of all, Peter, I was really encouraged what you said about SEND activities, and I think it's a really exciting opportunity to collaborate across the sector with SEND activities, because often you do get sort of 5 or 6 kids in one school who are quite isolated. They struggle to find activities after school that are appropriate for them. Things like some pastoral things like internet safety and sex education may not be appropriate for them at their particular school, and that's when there's some sort of shared expertise. And single schools don't have the capacity for them, so I know that's sort of putting the cart a bit before.
We wouldn't necessarily be delivering sessions for.
No, I know you're not, but
it's about sharing
that
the
could,
CPD.
I think if things, as I said, I'm aware that that's not. It's more about training for teachers rather than providing activities. But there's my eyes
in touch.
Yeah,
and actually, exactly your point. Them also, it's the school's also generating what their interest is and what they, so it's about those conversations.
So one of the things we offer, for example, within the Senko forum is something called Ask Us, which is simply that sort of thing where a member of staff can, or the Senko can book in for a call. It can be one-to-one, or it can be part of a group if there's a number of people with the same sort of question, and then they can bring something that's not necessarily off topic, but it's something that's completely personal to them and the school at the time, and we can try and target some support or some guidance towards that, whatever that particular issue might be. So it's bringing all of those sorts of different services together into one partnership.
Yeah. Because I think the schools will be really struggling even more with their SEND now the money's changed. We've got less and there's less EHC plans.
That's right.
Councillor Sultan.
So on the back of Councillor Robotom's comment about sharing resources, often, with sports and transport, schools struggle. They don't have the transport facilities. And then when they're renting buses for sports days, that's also a very big cost for schools. So I was wondering if, as part of the wider offer, if something could be done around sports and transport where schools could share those resources, because often there are students who might not be doing well in academics, but sports is that one place where all kinds of kids, they get that outlet, they get to succeed in something that's non-academic, which then that success then filters in and trickles down into their academic success. And I was wondering if that is something that you would want to consider as part of your learning partnership, and see if there were schools that were maybe private independent schools and they might want to share their transport with other schools in the borough. And if you wanted to get those kinds of schools on board as well as part of a little bit of community giving back and the like.
It's something that we can look into. I don't think it is something that we can do immediately because it's obviously very expensive. And really the purpose of as saying in answer to the previous question, the purpose of the learning partnership is to very much work with teachers, because the relationship we need to have with schools is that we can do training, we can kind of provide support, advice and guidance. What we can't do is the doing on the ground. So we're very much trying to avoid creating the kind of relationship where there's an expectation on the local authority to provide and to do things for schools, because we have very limited capacity to be able to deliver that. And as soon as we start to bring in those sorts of programs, the exponential cost is something that we're not therefore in control of. And as we know, for example, with different elements of transport, it can be very, very expensive. We do have something which is funded by the Youth Sport Trust, which is the school games coordinator, which is someone who sits within the kind of staffing at Burlington Danes. So they do a lot of primary based sports activities, and they are delivered for the children around those sorts of things. But in terms of transport, that is something the schools have to organise themselves, unfortunately.
I will, however, maybe just intervene to say there are a lot of institutions in the borough with money, and I'm not close enough to this to know, but the football clubs, St Paul's and Latimer and Godolphin, I was talking, actually have budgets for things. So if through this, all schools identified a need, it could be a very legitimate way to say, if you've got funding, we could go to Chelsea or go to Fulham and see if actually, and in fact, I've even in different roles, there have been big corporates like Nike have been interested in investing in a space and having a training academy. So it's, but I can make an action actually to do some thinking with the team on this from things I've heard about in a previous role. The other is in the industrial strategy. And the money we can leverage through there. So if this is the form through which we get started, understand where schools are really struggling or where they've done great practice, let us then all help out by maybe injecting some corporate money in, and not saying we'll have a go at that, rather than because I know how strained budgets are, but I think this is where everyone needs to pull in, to including corporates to support the area.
I agree. I think even if the council cannot fund those things, but there is a genuine need across the board in schools, then perhaps the council can play a role and be an intermediary and get some funding from corporates. And we have some fantastic corporates in the borough that we could build a program with going forward.
Great, and we'll note that action. I'm happy to pick that up with Councillor Sanderson as well, once we catch up. Yeah, Marie, did you want to ask that as general?
I know in Fulham football ground do such work, and so does Chelsea.
Yeah,
so we already have that sort of commitment in the borough in terms of. And also the breakfast club. So there are lots of things that are already the corporate.
We're good on football. The best schools
To finish this.
We don't have the funding.
No, I don't think it.
We did. I'd love it if we did, but we don't. And actually, what we are describing is that funding and that capacity and that flexibility which we had during COVID is now disappearing and will completely have been gone by April 23. So our education funding often and shrinks as well. So we are having to look at different ways. But again, we did see during COVID how our local independent schools made very fantastic offers. We do see, some again, the independent schools provide sort of extracurricular activities and opportunities for others. So there is quite a lot happening on the ground, but we don't necessarily orchestrate it. That said, we're always looking for funding opportunities from those, any funding opportunities from developers or anchor institutions. So we'd be very pleased to work with you on that.
Yeah. It's about where the onus is, isn't it? If you say what the need is, they've got the often, and they're already delivering. You're right, Marie. They've got this kit, equipment, site, staff already. It's just making sure we actually ask them. Keep going back and asking for more sometimes in a nice way, but because they usually will say yes. Okay, right. Mindful of time and the temperature of the room, which you're spared if you're dialing in. But it's really, it's university. We carry on talking about children education. So I move to item 7, Summer in the City delivery report, and I believe I've been cued that there is a video, but I'll hand over to Peter to briefly summarise and.
So it's very much in the video, because this is really down to the children and what they've done during
There's 10% of the battery remain. Very
Does the video say what it's about as well? Fine, it's literally end to end explained in the video.
Can I just warn everyone, like there were some issues with sharing the presentation, so I'll try.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
We're going to try and then we'll stop
fine.
it and then we'll go to any reflections afterwards. So we don't need to be talking and listening and watching at the same time.
Let's try this. People on Zoom, can you see this? Yeah. Do you see the video?
Not yet.
Well organized.
Thank you. That's what I last saw you. I think you were, yeah.
It just says Hammersmith and Fulham governance has started screen sharing, but nothing has appeared as yet.
I think, yeah, it might take just a few more seconds. Sorry.
Might be a bit of a lag.
Okay.
Oh, waiting, Peter. You were mentioning I'm going to get the full jazzy title, Winter.
Oh, I've closed it down now, so I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it's basically the Christmas program. So it's a similar. So it's essentially we've got each holiday now. There's a clear program kind of in place that runs through the half term, the Christmas, and so on. So there's lots of sessions that are booked in for the winter, the festivals and so on. So it should be really positive.
And how would people find out about it if they're sort of piques their interest or?
It's all through. It's gone up to schools. Yeah.
Just
Try again.
Is it all going to be online, the winter offer or the holiday offer?
No, there's in-person sessions as well.
As in, are you asking Councillor Khan if it will be advertised and all clear online?
Yeah,
about
where can residents find out more information about it?
It'll be on. First is through the schools and the school zone, and secondly, it will be on the council website and so on.
Okay, excellent.
Well,
We've tended to avoid leafleting because I don't think people really. It's costly and it doesn't really.
It goes in a bin.
Kind of thing.
yeah.
Great
Well,
figures you got.
Lovely tradition in that videos obviously don't work in live meetings, especially ones that are live streamed. Yeah, we're gonna try one more time. We understand if anyone joining us online as perhaps.
Maybe you can send it out.
Yeah, we can, I'm sure, put the link in or link directly in fact to this if it's on there. Okay, that's maybe a bit more fun. No, it's still loading. I think we could potentially be here a while waiting for this to load, which is a shame.
Having read the report, I think it was a success.
We can play it for people in the room, but we just
Maybe just possibly share the video in the chat and then people can watch it.
We'll share in the chat. We will link it to this live stream meeting, put it in some comments as well, so that people can go straight through and watch it afterwards. And did you want to maybe just do some headlines?
Can we see it in the room?
Yeah. I'm sorry, just for people on Zoom, like you won't be able to see this. I think you'll be able to hear it. But so we're just going to play it for the people in the room. Sorry about that. It'll just be 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Send it out as a link.
So you said you won't be able to see it.
I was with it and I came out of it.
He said you won't.
I was waiting, but I thought was it.
He said you won't be able to. He said you won't be able to see it.
Just to say we are now still live streaming, everyone, so just keep muted for a moment. Okay, good. Okay, so we do like to try and minimise discrepancy in experience between those joining virtually and in person, but we enjoyed lots of visuals of very lively and exuberant and fun-looking scenes, and you maybe just had some nice music for a few minutes. So I hope you enjoyed that. So I think there's only thing else you wanted to add, Peter. There's obviously something coming up. We disseminated through schools about a similar programme for winter, and it will be for upcoming holidays.
Yeah, so I think really, I'm not going to take any credit at all. I think that the commissioning team and working with Let Me Play did a fantastic job to deliver. I just had the great opportunity to go around in the middle of August and just see loads of kids smiling and running around parks and rowing on the river, and I got caught in an enormous monsoon in Sandsend Play Centre of all things. But it was just great to have an opportunity to go and see how much the children were really benefiting from it. Obviously, within the, I think it was seen by the DFA.
Stop putting that line coming out.
And they came down and they did another video, which I'm glad's not been shown because it's got me waffling on in it. So, and yeah, so I think the whole thing was just was a great success. And I think moving forward, obviously the team had a lot of work to do and to kind of make sure that it was with all of the different partners, etc. But I think without Let Me Play, it would have been a real challenge to kind of really get so many different and wide variety of activities out there. So yeah, just a great thing to be able to share, because I know that obviously the CPAC has been very much involved in kind of interrogating it in its inception, etc.
Yeah, and I really
in other boroughs, children had to pay.
Yeah,
Yes,
brilliant. Good
that's
point,
true.
Marie, about it being free. And I was wondering whether there was anything that was sustained from it, i.e. I know that people, lots of kids already do kind of like things like you mentioned rowing, for example, but there might be like a range of different things. Is there anything that came out as actually?
Well, when the rowing one was a very good example, actually, where they had children that had been in the rowing sessions in previous years that were coming back to support and work with the kind of new cohorts coming through. So again, that was a really positive thing. I think some of the work that things will pay fruition, that's for certain, especially with some of the armed services, etc.
Yeah.
Is it Fulham Reach Boat Club?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Are they carrying on?
Yes, they will. I'm sure they will. Yeah, they've been really keen to stay as a partner.
Oversubscribed.
That's right. Yeah.
Rose, if they carry on into these months. So
Yeah.
good. Okay, lovely. Any other final points, Councillor Selkan? Did you want to come in on?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on and say that it's a fantastic initiative, and I hope that it goes out to the schools on time, so they can make that offer and forward it to students on pupil premium and free school meals before it goes on the council website, because obviously we want to help all the children who are on FSM and who are on pupil premium. So I think a timely effort to get the schools to put it out there is great, because a few schools that I did ask them about, so have you advertised this? And they said, yes, we did send one. I just hope that it goes out earlier so that when parents are planning what to do with their children in the winter, it reaches the right targeted families that we want to actually target and provide that relief to, and it goes through the schools earlier.
Whoa. It does go through the schools earlier, because all the leaflets are right where parents, when they come in, they give them.
Yes.
This is where my other hand. It is given in time for parents to, and that's why there's such a good turn up in Ravenscourt Park when they do come and register for the training. So that's done on time.
And we also target through other mediums as well. So we use the kind of children and young people's team to make sure that it gets to the most important children.
Signs, there are lots of signs all over the borough.
I mean, it's nice to see you had some older send young people
that's
there.
right.
So it's obviously hitting the right people, because they really
As much
struggled
as
during
possible.
the
As much as possible. We'd like it to be
holidays.
more, but as much as possible, definitely.
Yeah, I was at the Ravenscourt Park as
Yeah.
well, so I saw the
Yeah,
children.
no,
It
that's
was
right.
really, they
No, it was
enjoyed themselves.
definitely
I
great.
came up there with my grandson, so I was
Excellent.
really, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Nandini, over to you.
I was just wondering, for SEN children, does the program go up to 25? I think there's a bit of confusion there, and I think I did manage to get my son onto it when he was about 20, 21. And they did allow me. I just said for SEN children, it should go up to 25. But is that the case really?
It's mostly targeted to school age children, but it's something that we can definitely look at developing. But obviously we need the right partners to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they did tell me about cohorts and things like that. They said he'll be with much younger children. Is that okay with you? And we did do it.
It's a very good point. But we would, it's about looking at making sure that we've got the right partners so that those programs can be a success, and that's not always possible.
I'm sure I saw some 22 in there.
There are some bits, there's some small bits and pieces,
Because we do offer
In the
target
R&L.
programs
There's
as well,
different,
yeah.
there's different things,
Okay, so maybe we can have that as an action to you know, staff permitting, etc., provision permitting. But it's a good suggestion, a good observation of possibly where we just need to clarify it and have it as a more formal offer, Nandini. So thank you very much for that. That's great.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, on the offer, it's really clear which activities are targeted to which age groups.
Yeah, people come along, don't they, when they like the look of stuff. So and it identifies people who are interested. Great. Okay, right. I'm going to just mention as item 8 dates of the future meetings, just so we got it all in our calendars. So the next one is on the 30th of January and then the 27th of March. So just to make sure that's hopefully in people's diaries already, but people can scribble it in if anyone's watching as well. And that's it. We'll obviously we've got a list of a few things to follow up on. Thank you so much for joining online and in person. And it's wonderful to hear about all the stuff that's going on. It's real heart and soul stuff. So thank you so much to all of your teams. And thank you for those to join, holding us to account, in Marie, fabulous Marie. And we'll see you all on the 30th of January.